Uh, my wife is just amazing with all she's doing, and I can't praise her enough. She's doing amazing work.
Wow. David, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, every time I'm on the show, I try to share. I mean, without Miles, we don't have this.
Right.
Again, when he came over here, I told the story a million times. My wife had 3, cell phones on, an iPad. Our Wi-Fi TV had, GTV on it. Miles talking. She beat it into my head pretty much from the beginning. And it took me a little while to listen. And I like to think that maybe that's what's happening to the rest of America. Maybe it just takes them a little while to catch up. And they will eventually, Chris, I think. Just like we did.
A lot of them are still dealing with not understanding that the propaganda that they've been spoon-fed for, decades is exactly that,
Great
propaganda.
Point. That's right.
Every opportunity I get, I point people to G News or GTV, and I say it's not all in Mandarin. You can find English subtitles. You can find programming in English.
The Fringe.
Nice advertising right here.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. Glad to help. And take the time and look for it, because it's worth it. It's worth getting a different perspective, an alternative perspective that is not going to come to you from
recognized. Whether or not we know it right now, we're in the middle of something really, really, really big, and we just got to keep this thing rolling, and no doubt about it.
Right, David. I think also I saw your microphone today with very nice logos of the Rule of Law Foundation and Rule of Law Society. This is the non-profit organization that support us, help protect the Chinese whistleblowers and try to expose the evil nature of the CCP online and every sort of anti-CCP acts. They are really helping the dissidents, the Chinese dissidents overseas, to protect their lives. So we really want to make sure that we be grateful for the foundation, for everything that they do to help and support us. And David, I think there's one topic that we recently barely touched upon is the Hong Kong movements. Because even before the whistleblower, does Hong Kong, all of those movements affect you in your understanding of the CCP or your dedication to the movement?
It only strengthens it. It strengthens the dedication, because we know that this is how the CCP operates. They operate through propaganda.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And we talked about that before. And the interesting thing was when they were at their maximum, when they were protesting. Remember all those students in the street? There was thousands, like you said, there was thousands. What happened right after that? Remember we talked about this, Isla. COVID.
Right.
Yep.
And it was at that point, I didn't even realize it until I was talking to, I think it was a later episode, talking to Olive. I was like, wait a second. All of a sudden, this thing lit up in my head. I was like, they created COVID. Possibly.
Try to stop the students being on the street so that people stay in the home, right? And there's no more protest. And it seems like CCP had all of things handled.
Yep. And for the longest time, they were able to lie, which is what they do, about the origination. And even to this day, they haven't said anything about patient zero. They haven't said anything about the construct of the virus, even if they have done any epidemiology on it.
It's the CCP's goal to make sure that this stays happening forever.
Right.
And that's why they got to be held accountable.
Right.
That's it right there, bottom line. Hold them accountable.
That's right.
Take down the CCP.
Do you think the U.S. is doing enough support for the Hong Kong students, or regarding like protections or political asylum? Do you think the U.S. government is doing enough assistance for helping the Hong Kong students to get out of the situation or to stop what the communist regime in China?
Well, while Trump was in office, I would have said yes.
Yeah.
And now, I think clearly the answer is no. The only thing that this administration is looking to do is keep putting dollars in their pocket.
Yeah, that's right, and driving us further into debt. Yep. And one thing about Hong Kong is, I know this, and we've covered it on past shows, is those in Hong Kong that are living there now have two choices. You can stay and fight, and probably for them to be. And they knew if they stayed there that they had no power against the CCP no matter what they did, because they're going to do whatever they can do to take over Hong Kong, just like they're going to do in Taiwan, just like they're going to try to do to the rest of the world. And so they had that choice. So
also the community got separated because they have to fly outside Hong Kong to do what they want and to have their voice to be heard.
Yeah, and it's always been the CCP's their side of the argument. We saw this with the Alaskan summit with Blinken when we got trampled on. It's always the CCP's, their defense of it and their argument is to stay out of our business. This is our country, and we'll do what we want. And that's not how things work, especially when you have something going on like what's going on in Hong Kong and Taiwan, which could possibly be predicted as the next World War III, the beginning of it. And again, what they're doing with the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. You just can't allow that to happen. You can't let a country say, stay out of our business, we'll do what we want. That's not how, national diplomacy works, and that's not how humans are to be treated, and that's not how, when we're talking about the humanity of people, we don't ignore that. We do get involved, and we have a history of that. So it's going to be taken care of, maybe not by this administration. I'd like to see him grow a pair, sorry. But you probably
not going to happen.
Yeah, not with Biden. Not with Biden.
No.
We can do a little bit discussion more on the current administration because as we know that 2022 is coming, so there are certain hopes for, I think, especially for you guys who have the rights to vote, to predict the future. So what are your thoughts on the periods right now till 2022? Because we have a lot of things going on. The COVID-19 investigations, the future elections, and all of the problems that we see that has left after the Trump left the office. So,
yeah, Republicans taking control. Go ahead, Chris. I'll let you have this one. Yeah.
Well, first of all, as long as the elections are secure, I don't think there's going to be any problem at all.
Point.
We saw what happened in New Hampshire. It only registered 26 or 28% of Republican ballots. It's impossible to win. It's stacked in the other side's favor. So what are you going to do? I mean, you have to. They in the last election they had pallets and pallets of pre-printed ballots. That's kind of a funny little phrase, but
rhymes quite nicely.
Yes, shipped in, and the paper was all wrong, I guess, and they ran them through, and not even a single fold, right? If you send out a mail-in ballot, are you going to get it back and it doesn't have any folds in it? I'm thinking not.
But what happened when we tried to talk about it? Like I said, we talked about it earlier in the show. They shut you down.
Every media platform. Oh, and YouTube was one of the worst. Of course, they're associated with Google, the Alphabet organization. And that's another one. If you do a Google search, you're liable to not get any of the search information that you're after. You're going to find contrary information of what you're after. So you have to find other search engines.
And there's no way you could possibly tell me that many people voted for this guy, Mr. Magoo, that's in office right now. I can't get over it.
Well, that's why they kept him in his basement during the campaigning. They didn't want people seeing him.
How could you win an election when you're not even campaigning? It's impossible. There's so much that points toward that this was fixed. And I didn't expect us to be talking about the election fraud, but man, and like, Chris talked about with me before the show, there's something coming up soon, right, Chris? In 90 days or something?
90 days, 90 days. We're going to get a report on
COVID-19
origination.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Well, there was something you talked about before the show about the election also happening.
The Section 230.
Oh, Section 230. Well, that's against the media, right?
Yeah.
And all the platforms, whether it be Facebook or Twitter or whoever. That's why you need to be on a platform that believes in free speech.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've always kind of wondered about is that we always talk about free speech, but if we're on their platform, they get to make the rules, right?
Yeah.
They make the rules, and whether or not the rules are fair or not, it doesn't matter. It's their rules, their playground. So it's hard for me to even though I don't like the fact that they squash opinions that they don't like, it's hard for me to call it a free speech issue, because the only ones that can violate your First Amendment rights is actually the government. But it makes you wonder, what kind of connection is there between these media platforms and the government?
Well, that's where that's the kicker right there. There is something going on there, and that's you kind of answer your own question, I think. Yeah. That's what's happening. There's definitely some kind of evil underdoings between all these fools and big tech and MSM and the left. I mean, we saw it during his entire presidency, during Trump's presidency. And that's...
They constantly tinker with their algorithms. As soon as a new catchphrase comes up, they do everything they can to squash it so that you can't find it.
Yeah. And here we are today still talking about it.
Yes.
You know? After all this time, we knew what was happening. We fought back against it, and if you did, you were a racist, a xenophobe. What else were we, Chris?
Homophobe, phobophobe,
misogynist.
Yeah, phobophobes,
whatever. Whatever they wanted to call us, that's what you were. You couldn't argue against it, or it made you a bad person, and that's the saddest part about it.
Well, what they don't understand,
we didn't have a voice.
What they don't understand that those words actually lost meaning with them doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's meaningless to be called that these days, right? Because everybody's like, oh, there they go again. They just don't want to talk about anything that people actually want to talk about. So,
it's unfortunate. Yeah, it is. It loses its value. It definitely does. No doubt about it.
I couldn't help smiling when you guys are talking about all of those experiences and phenomena that we saw here today in the social media, and especially for the misleading information when we are doing online surfing for all of the researchers, because this actually happened to Miles a couple years ago, and people just don't believe him. That a lot of people at that time, even myself, will believe in the mainstream media, believe in the authorities, all of those big platforms, until my own Twitter accounts got locked 3 times after I report Dr. Li-Man Yang, shared reports of Dr. Li-Man Yang saying something about the election fraud, and all of a sudden my accounts just got locked. So here we kind of like experienced the same pathway of what Miles had been tried a couple years ago, and a lot of the facts and experience got verified by ourselves, and I think that's how and why this movement brought us together, right?
Yeah. And it's crazy how they dictate. Chris made a good point about it, but I think to me it's just crazy how they can dictate what you can say and what you can't say, and that's why I think people got kind of confused about it. Is it a violation of your First Amendment right, freedom of speech? I know what you're saying there, but
they hide behind it.
They
hide behind that.
That's what it is.
And even though the origin of Facebook probably goes back to some rather questionable government activities back before Facebook actually existed, because there are certain programs that kind of ended the day Facebook went into existence.
Oh.
I don't know if you knew that.
No,
but,
I didn't.
Yeah, so
interesting. We'll have to talk about that one.
We can talk about that another time.
Yeah. Okay, so while we're talking about the American government and politics and things like that, now again, it's my opinion, and anybody who's as far right as you and I are, we're not so far right that we're crazy, but Trump did make America great again. I want to ask you, Chris, what do you think that Pelosi, the Democratic Party, the Squad, the MSM, big tech, why? This is the big question here. Why are they so hell-bent on destroying everything that Trump put into motion? What is the end game? I want your honest opinion. What is the end game for the left? What does the Democratic Party want to do with our government? Hope I didn't put you on the spot there, but
no, I think it boils down to what they want is the same thing that the CCP wants. They want world domination. They want the world population to go down exponentially, right? Small number of people. They're total believers in man-made climate change. They're total believers in all of these things that, I'm not saying that climate change doesn't exist. Don't get me wrong.
Well, the climate changes. That's
right. The climate
changes. That's the way I see it, man.
It's a cyclical program that the Earth goes through. And so what have they been doing? They've been, packing away, cash into foreign accounts. That's what they do, right?
Yeah.
It's never made sense to me that we borrow money from China in order to give money as a donation back to China.
Yeah.
And yet now we're paying interest on that money we borrowed from China. Okay, are there really kickbacks, coming back to these politicians?
Yeah.
It makes me wonder.
Yeah.
It really makes me wonder. So, in a nutshell, they want the destruction of everything.
Yeah.
Now, as a side note, everybody, Trump's platform was "Make America Great Again." All right, and they the left started complaining about, it's all America first, America first. Well, honestly, I think if you were living in a country, you want that country to do well. It's not that you want every other country in the world to do bad, but you want the best for the country that you're living in, right? I kind of equate it to a silly little thing that I do, right? If I'm living in a particular area of the country, I like to support the sports teams that are in that area of the country. So if I'm living in the Midwest somewhere, I'll support a Midwest team. If I'm living on the East Coast, I'll support an East Coast team. And if I'm living in the South somewhere, I'll support a Southern team. That's the way I believe. So it kind of follows that logic, though, right? Where you are is where you should be supporting. Now, I full well believe that anybody who comes from China will also want that country to do well. Even though they want the government gone, they want the CCP to go away forever, they want China to flourish too. And I absolutely want the same thing. I want prosperity for the entire planet. I don't think anybody in their right mind wouldn't want that. And that's probably a hard thing for some people to get behind is, just because you want America to be first doesn't mean you want others to suffer. And that's,
No, that's a great point. That really is. And I've talked about that also in past episodes, that we need to understand that we don't want to be enemies with China. Absolutely not. I want to see them succeed. Of course I do. We want that. It's like Chris said, we want everybody to be successful. We want, everybody wants world peace, Mm-hmm. It's probably never going to happen. There's too much... there's too much going on within each country to be able to have that kind of peace that you want with them. But it's what we all strive for. It really is. Sometimes I think maybe the left doesn't as much. It always feels like with the, your opinion of the left there, that the left comes in and just kind of messes everything up, and we got to come in and clean it up. And that's the way it seems like things are. Because the way we think as Republicans, as conservatives, is just, we are okay with normalcy. But the left just goes off the rail with everything. A perfect example is, I don't have a problem with a person that's transgender. I don't. There's nothing they can do about that. If that's, I can't myself say whether that's a mental problem, whether a man all of a sudden thinks he's a woman at a certain age. What I have a problem with is when a man becomes a woman in his mind at a certain age and then gets on the track and then competes against other women and blows them away in their own sports. I have a problem with that. So that's the problem I have with the left, is they just go so far with everything, with freedoms for everybody, and anything that seems normal to the normal human just becomes this massive state of confusion for everybody.
Yeah.
You're watching, again, transgenders is a hot issue right now. And the way I kind of equate it, I have a little saying that I like to say about this. It seems like the smallest percentage of the population creates the greatest percentage of problems. There is not a lot of people that are BLM supporters. There aren't. It's because the exposure they get from the MSM. there's not a lot of people that are transgenders. It's because of the exposure they get from the MSN, and it's because of the favoritism they get from the government. You cannot allow a man, a kid who's grown up and went through the full cycle of what males go through, testosterone, we have bigger bones.
Yep.
Everything's different in a male's makeup than a female's. You can't go through that process of growing and then get to the point where you can't grow anymore and then say, you know what, I think I'm a woman. And then they go and I mean, you're still developing in high school, but there are instances in high school where you have a high school senior who'll be a woman his whole, a girl or a young woman his whole life. And then one day decide he's a male or she's a male, and they let her get on the track and compete against other females and destroy their lives by destroying these track records, and these women can no longer, their college scholarships fly out the window because they gave it to the transgender person. So there's a lot to be said about why I am a person that leans more toward the right. I would love to meet in the middle, Chris, with them, but it's really difficult sometimes.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
A perfect example of what we were just talking about is in mixed martial arts. There was a competitor in the women's division that was born male, did whatever they did for a transition, still had the testosterone levels, and competed with women in mixed martial arts, and literally cracked women's skulls.
Eye sockets were getting smashed.
Sockets getting smashed, broken, what is an oculus or whatever it's
ocular
called.
bone.
That's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying, and that should never be allowed. I think I just saw recently that a trans woman broke yet again the world record for weightlifting in the women's division.
Yes.
I don't understand this. I mean,
and there's a difference. I mean, it's just the way it is. That's how we're, genetically structured, humanly, male versus female. The Canadian bicyclist, have you seen him, her? This girl, man, I don't even know what do you call him, is so big when she's on a bike. I mean, you look at all the other riders and you're like, oh my God, she's breaking world records. But
they're not.
I know.
There's always going to be an asterisk there, right?
Yeah.
Just like Barry Bonds and Mark McGuire, right? There was always an asterisk to that home run.
It's really
record.
Crazy. They got in trouble for using steroids, but it's okay for a woman to trans.
Right.
And I believe possibly that there is something going on there. Maybe it's a mental issue. Maybe it's real. I don't know. I'm not trans. I can't tell you what Bruce Jenner went through.
They've actually changed the DSM.
Okay.
In DSM-3, it was definitely classified as a mental disorder.
Okay.
And then they went to DSM-4, now DSM-5, and they've really, really softened it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna start wrapping things up here.
Right.
Yeah, well, we have another American on the show. We have a lot to cover here.
Right. I think it's a very special edition of the program that we're having today. Yeah, and also the very first. I think the last question, especially based on the conversation that the two gentlemen have here in our program. Do you believe it's a left or right problem in front of the CCP threat into this country? Or let's say, I think CCP knows the system, knows the U.S. politics system so well that they know the United States is so concerned with the left or right issues, so that people, especially in understanding the evil nature and the threats of the CCP to this country, we were not unified, right? We're so concerning being left or being right, being politically correct or not. But we're not realizing the threats that the Communist Party are posing into this country. So, in your opinion, how do you, ready for the tough questions and the very last questions of the Fringe program. So, in your opinion, how do the U.S. community understand the threats of CCP, especially we're so concerning being left or right at the current moment?
Well, first of all, I don't think that your average citizen in America has any idea. Okay? One of my favorite phrases that I ever saw, and I'm going to paraphrase here, is it goes left wing, right wing, it doesn't matter. It's all part of the same bird. And it's all part of the same problem. Okay? I think during the Trump administration, we found out how corrupt the Democrats were. But at the end of the Trump administration, we also found out how corrupt the Republicans are. It's not a single party issue. It's throughout the American government, and they all need to go.
Yeah, it's always everybody's, wish that we could somehow meet in the middle, and we do really get caught up in that left versus right. And I think the way the CCP looks at that is they love it. They love us seeing fighting within ourselves. That's why they think they're in control, because I don't think they are, but they think they're in control because they don't have that. If you argue against the CCP, that's it. You're going down. You're disappearing. Right. So great point and great question. It is definitely something we need to think about. And are you left? Are you right? Yeah, but the thing is, the way our government was created is we have that for other reasons, for checks and balances. We want to make sure that we stay that course that we need to stay to be successful and to be able to deal with our foreign enemies from within and abroad. And oh man, we could talk about domestic terrorism. We're going to run out of time though. We'd love to talk about that maybe next time we have you on.
We'll get to it.
I'd like to talk about what domestic terrorism really is and who really is a domestic terrorist.
That's right.
Apparently we are right now. And also racism, which is a hot issue right now. Asians, white people, we're all white supremacists if we support Trump.
That's right.
I mean, it got really bad in a whole lot of ways. So maybe that'll set us up for the next episode there.
That's a good idea.
But great question, yeah. All right, well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us, man. We really appreciate having you, man.
It was a pleasure.
Great. Yeah, we really like to see Isla. We've talked about this before, and I know Miles wants to see this. We want to see more Native Americans involved with GTV, in the whistleblower movement, in the new federal state of China, and people that really understand what's happening with our government and understand what's happening with our movement and where we're headed. And Chris definitely has a grip on that. And man, great having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I think we want to thank our attack team, OBS team, to hanging here with us. Also, great thanks to Fox. I think she's already in her sweet dreams right now, but we still want to appreciate her time and devotion to the program. So thank you so much for all of the Fringers for the continuous support and following on our Moss channel. And remember to download GTV, read G News every day. And Chris, thank you so much for your time and participation today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And again, this is David Vincent Bob with The Fringe. I want to thank my co-host Isla and my very special guest Chris for joining us this evening. I'd like to thank our whole entire OBS crew, everybody behind the scenes. We have a ton of people working here to make this show happen, and we can't thank you enough. Thank you. Again, The Fringe is on every Tuesday and Friday from 7 to 8 p.m. right here on gtv.org, MOS Talk. I want to thank you all again for joining us. We'll see you again on the next episode. Thank you very much. God bless you. Have a good evening.